Sorry, it's taken me just a moment. The webinar format can be a little funky. I am very familiar with it though, so thankfully I'm not having a hard time adding folks here. So everybody's getting promoted to panelists. Feel free to jump on if you want to be on camera. You don't have to, no pressure. Gemini, welcome. Hopefully you'll get that offer to join as a panelist. So please let me know, direct message if you can't for some reason. I'm going to also make it so our attendees are able to raise their hands later. Let's make sure that's on. You can view the participant count. I'm just enabling all of our special permissions. Let's see here. Q&A. I want to make sure the chat is open as well. Want to be able to post in there. Everybody, yep, okay, all right. So, all right, let's see here. And we're just waiting to see if Gemini can join as a panelist. Let's see here. Nothing changed. Yeah, it might be a little slow to change Gemini, so we'll give it a moment there. It was a little slow for you, Kadeem and Mason, right? When you guys joined. Oh my gosh, the sun's really coming through there. Okay, okay. So yeah, it should just take a moment there, Gemini. Thank you all for your patience. We'll get started here in just a moment. It might take a little longer because Gemini is an outside participant. So let's see if that helps. Maybe I can resend it. Let me try that. Hi, Mason. Okay, let's see.
Hey,
here.
Tiffany.
Good to see you. I'm going to try. Oh, I think it worked. No, it didn't. I was too excited. Sorry for the delay, folks. These little webinar formats can sometimes be funky. Let's see here. Yeah, I do have the email. Let's see here. Yeah, one moment, Greg. Let's get that from the calendar. Okay. Google likes to make things easier, but it actually sometimes makes it harder. All right. There they are. All right. Promote to panelist. That might work. Thanks, Christine, for saying that. Okay. Oh, there we go. I think we got her. Hey, Gemini. Let me see if there's anyone else on this that I haven't promoted yet that I should. All right. All right. Goody good. And Gemini, I see in there, are you able to unmute or control your master controls?
Looks like she is on the way, just
Yeah.
dealing with the ever-present Friday technical issues as usual.
Mm-hmm. Once again, thanks everybody for your patience. It's worth the wait, promise.
While we're waiting, don't forget to join all of our Slack channels. #Zoom_in_color or ZoomInfo_win or queer_plus. Thanks for joining.
Yeah. So just a brief, let me point that out. Thank you for reading that, Andrea. A reminder that today is going to be recorded and that we're going to take a photo. We would like to do that toward the end. And also that this meeting is going to be mostly just saved for Gemini's resources and then ours. And we may or may not use some clips from it in the future, but that's not necessarily certain yet. So we're still sort of in the throes of figuring that out. We just want to make sure that it's available for Gemini to keep in her resources as well. So hopefully she's able to unmute and come on camera here or something soon. Let's see if I need to enable any other settings. Allow, change, rename. Nope. Nope, this should all work. Yeah, thanks for putting that in the chat, Christine. Easy for people to copy paste, hopefully. If not, they can save the chat, hopefully at the bottom. Okay.
Can everyone hear me?
There you are, yeah.
All right. We
And I
did
can
it,
see
y'all.
you. Hooray. All
Technology is
right.
technology sometimes, y'all.
It sure is. Awesome. I'm so glad you're here, Gemini. Thank you for your patience with trying to get in.
Of course. Yeah. I'm glad we got everything figured out. Glad to be here.
Awesome. All right, Andrea, you can take the screen down. We can go ahead and go to our, oh, what's this called? Gallery view. Let me go ahead and make sure that we have that recorded. I want to record the gallery view while we're in gallery. Let me just start by saying thank you all for waiting and for joining us today. My name is Tiffany Gillifor. Why am I talking a lot? Because I am a leader with my amazing colleagues here. As you can see, we've got Mason, Kadeem, Monique, who are leaders in Zoom in Color. And we've got Andrea, who's a leader on Queer Plus. We've also got Hunter here as well, who's also a leader in Queer Plus. I tried to promote you, Hunter. I'll try one more time if you'd like to join as a panelist. I'll try that one more time. And we've got many of our other leaders who are, some of them aren't here today, but they were helpful in making this happen today. Why are we working together? Well, because a lot of the things that we deal with in our ERGs are intersectional. And so today we've invited Gemini to join us to talk about showing up authentically in the workplace, managing and experiencing all of these different parts of our identities. And so that's part of why we're here, and also just to provide a space to discuss these sorts of things when it comes to being authentic. So before Gemini begins, I just want to take a moment to breathe, especially with all of the technological stuff, just taking a moment to focus and breathe to center ourselves. So let's just go ahead and take 30 seconds. I'm going to look at a timer here. And let's just focus on our breathing and repeat to yourself some sort of mantra. It can be anything. I'll offer one, and that is, I am enough just because I'm here. One more breath. All right. I'm going to read a poem very briefly. This is by Mickey Scott B. Jones. It's called An Invitation to a Brave Space. Together, we will create brave space, because there is no such thing as a safe space. We exist in the real world. We all carry scars. We all have caused wounds. In this space, we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. We amplify voices that fight to be heard elsewhere. We call each other to more truth and love. We have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it to be. But it will be our brave space together. And we will work on it side by side. An Invitation to Brave Space by Mickey Scott B. Jones. I'll make sure to share that in our resources afterwards if you want reference to that poem. But that said, let me introduce Gemini, and then Gemini will begin our conversation. So Gemini is a web developer for the state of Texas and the owner of Texas Web Games, or Web Gems, sorry, a web development firm based out of Austin, Texas. She's a tinkerer at heart, always trying to find out how to make things work more efficiently. She's also a parent, a musician, and a community organizer, and is currently responsible for the maintenance of multiple communities in her city. Over the years, prior to beginning transition, she found success in multiple careers spanning vast areas of company operations, but the computers have been calling her since the second grade, and she finally decided to listen. She looks forward to sharing her knowledge with Zoom in Color, Queer Plus, and WIN members, ZoomInfo, and beyond. Everybody, let's welcome Gemini. Hi, Gemini. So feel free to, I like the raised hand, that's great. Feel free to share with us a little intro about you beyond the intro I read, and you know, what you want to start with today.
Yeah, I mean, so navigating, sort of not just the workforce, but generally navigating society. And so I'm really glad you read that poem, but generally navigating society as a queer person, as a trans person, navigating in these intersections, we are constantly at war. All we do is navigate the fight for our existence, and so it definitely spoke to my soul, and not just creating a safe space, but a brave space, because we are here, we are in existence despite, so it's beautiful that you shared that with us. Thank you. Now, where do I start? If I had to have a conversation with the person I was 25 years ago, and I had to give her a piece of advice, I'd say, when it's hard to be you anyway. I have had the opportunity of navigating my transition through a pandemic in a world that is deeply intolerant of anything but the status quo. And it has been such an interesting journey. You know, not just navigating the queer world, but also navigating the world as a queer, trans, and disabled woman. I also have been diagnosed with hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It is an important part of my being, as it is important to maintain how I navigate life in order to function on a regular basis. But things like that have happened over the course of the last several months have put these sort of conversations of standing on business about myself into perspective. We live in a world where, if you exist anywhere outside of the status quo, you're going to hear it. You're going to hear persecution from one direction or another. It doesn't really matter. It's something we kind of all face. But in our community, we face, I say we face it on a level that scares me a little more, because there's an active movement of eradication happening, and that's terrifying, between the anti-trans laws nationwide. I live in a state with anti-trans laws. Like, my existence is a literal protest. And so in the workplace, it is especially important to be able to be myself, which I work for the state of Texas. You can imagine how terrifying that probably is. I'm still scared that the office of the attorney general is going to call one day and be like, "Hey, we found out you're trans, and so we have to have a conversation about your kid." I'm horrified that that's going to happen one day. But the reality is I'm thankful that I'm in a workplace that is actually very accepting and will also stand on business about my opinion, and about who I am as a person. Um, as far as showing up as myself in the workplace, the difficult decision starts from the moment I wake up. You know, a lot of folks wake up and they have their moments, they have their mantras, they take their shower, they're in the mirror and having that conversation with themselves. That is the moment that the difficult decision has to be made. Do I show up as myself? Do I mask? Am I gonna wear makeup today? Am I gonna wear my hair up or down? Am I gonna shave before this Zoom meeting? Those bits and pieces go into showing up as myself in the workplace. And for me, it's a matter of remembering the trauma of not showing up as myself. Remembering the trauma of having to convince myself to get in front of the camera, to convince myself to get in front of the screen, not wanting to go to work events because I don't ever feel like I can show up as myself. So why bother showing up? I went to a field day and karaoke event at my job a few weeks ago. I don't usually do those things, but it was really fun, honestly. And so a lot of it starts internal. A lot of it starts with being able to have that conversation with yourself where you feel that you are ready to present. And there is no time clock on that. I came out as a trans woman in November. It took me 30 some odd years to get here, so, you know, it's going to take time to be in a space where you feel like you can be yourself in the workplace. We kind of all bring a little bit of a shield to the workplace. We're not exactly the same person at work as we are when we're with our friends at the bar, or when we're with our family, when we're with our kids, so on and so forth. We all wear different hats. The idea is to ultimately get those hats as close to being a cohesive one being as possible, more or less. And so, especially as, being a trans person, it's very scary to navigate that journey because there are legal ramifications depending on where you are. There are social ramifications, not just your community, but the communities that you can create at work, because there's this refusal to normalize our existence. And so the only thing that we can do is be as loud as possible about it. I do my makeup for work probably 3 times a week. Maybe not every day because it's a lot to navigate, especially I work remotely. I like to be comfy, but I'll do my makeup 2 or 3 times a week for work. I stand on business about my identity. If I have to hyperfeminize for the moment, I'll hyperfeminize to get the point across because you're not going to misgender me on this camera. you know, but it's very important when having that conversation, because one of the things that I have learned navigating the world of unemployment, having to work contract to contract, and how you stand about yourself and how people perceive you. It is significantly harder to do that inside of places where the structure doesn't like that. So conversations like this open up the doors of what can we actively do to create those spaces such that this isn't needing to be a brave space, that this is a space that can be open and shared, that this is a space that can be had. And, I think when it comes down to it, everyone who showed up at this meeting has already taken the first step to showing up as themselves in the workplace. You know, you decided to show up to the meeting and say, this is important to me. I want to be me here. And for everybody who's listening, congratulations, great job. That is the hardest step, is the first step. Once you have gotten to the point where you are ready to say, this is who I am, this is how I will present, and nobody can tell me anything about it, that's when the push begins. Because at that point, you've made the decision. No one's going to stop you. There are going to be instances where it might make some people uncomfortable. Some of my own coworkers have had to adjust to using my pronouns properly because they hear the depth of my voice and they automatically assume. And I say, hey, let's have a conversation about this. And I think that's where it starts, having conversations coworker to coworker, individual contributors having those conversations with their managers and actually sort of trickling the importance of the conversation upward. It's not going to be somebody up at the top in the C-suite who's going to see this and say, hey, this is a matter of absolute importance and we need to do this right now. We need to make sure that they understand that. And sometimes it's showing up and standing on business about your pronouns. Sometimes it's wearing gender affirming clothing to a meeting and, understanding that this is who I am. If it makes people uncomfy, that's their problem. As I said, I like to be comfy. And I'm not gonna discomfort myself because someone has to push their morals. That's a conversation between you and your gods. I'm over here living my best life.
Accurate.
Yeah, and I imagine that many of the people who are sitting here in this conversation with us are trying to figure out what that next step is, and that's talking to a coworker, talking to the person who's talking to the person who's on your team, or having a team conversation about it even. Bring this stuff to your team meetings. Make it a conversation. If you make it a conversation, you make it important enough for people to hear. And when people start listening, stuff starts happening. Yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it for me. Definitely wanted to open the floor because I'm sure that
Yeah.
people have tons of questions about how to navigate certain things, and I'm sure I can speak to those things as well. So I want to also, give folks the opportunity to chime in and talk about what's going on so we can apply this directly to their experiences.
Yes. So please, folks, I know we're in webinar format, but I wanted to offer some time for our leaders here to bring up anything that they would like to offer, or even just offer their own perspective. And then if you want to raise your hand, I can make it so you can come off mute, I think. And if not, I'll figure out how to. But you can also use the Q&A or the chat, whatever you like, to post questions or comments for Gemini or for anyone else. But let me go ahead and open it up to join Gemini in opening it up to anybody who has thoughts or questions or just wants to share.
Yeah, and I mean, even amongst us here, if y'all have any questions, feel free. It's not easy to show up like this, but I'm happy to I'm happy to inform y'all that it's possible. And I will acknowledge that to an extent there there are there are advantages that I have. Like, I'm not in a small town in Texas. I live in the state capital and one of the more progressive places in the state. This may not be as easy for someone who lives in, say, Fort Worth, or who lives in, like, the panhandle of Texas, or,
Lubbock.
even out, you know, or someone who's living in Florida right now. It's not always easy to show up in those spaces, but finding those bits and pieces in the workplace, finding ERG groups that align with these so that you can show up authentically in those. And then extending that out to people who you begin to trust on your team, people who you begin to trust who manage over you. Like, my director has called me my correct pronouns in front of the state epidemiologist. I think we're doing all right. It's just, we have reached a point where it's push or get pushed, if that makes sense.
Right.
And so we've got to do the pushing, because no one's going to do it for us at this point.
I definitely appreciate the take that you have, and you sharing your experience and your thoughts on what you have gone through. And it says a lot, especially being in Texas, and Texas as a whole being one of the lesser of the progressive states in the United States, and still saying like, hey, I'm here, I'm staying here, instead of pushing someplace a little bit more accepting. You make the space around you accept who you are. And I think a lot, and that gives a great example for everybody to understand that, like, if you're feeling uncomfortable and you're not feeling welcome and accepted in the space that you're in, and you may feel like you want to move, go, find another space, it is not beyond your own power to just say that I am staying here. I am in this space. So you either get comfortable with that, or you could be the one to leave, because I am here and I'm going to live my truth. And that's amazing. It definitely helps people speak up and, network, get out there, be a person who comes from not having a voice at all to being the loudest voice in the room.
Absolutely. And I think that one of the things that I've been sort of percolating about since watching the Kendrick Lamar concert on Wednesday is, if anybody gives me pushback, I'm just going to remind them that Kendrick Lamar is okay with queer artists, so why aren't you?
And jumping off of Kadim's point, I actually do have a question. Because I know, first off, your journey has been nothing short of difficult, and it's been unique. So I'm just kind of curious, like, what does your support system look like, and what's something that's unique that they may have done for you that, while they may not have found it to be like the most important thing, it was something that was valuable for you during your journey?
So my support system right now is primarily consisting of my partner, Hope, who's an absolute sweetheart, my kid, Imani, who is the light of my life, and our two pets. We live in our comfy little weird apartment in Austin, and we just keep it super chill here. And this is a person, and even my kid, as I've been transitioning, these are people who have seen me as myself from the get-go and have asked no questions whatsoever. They want to understand my experience. They listen when I share my stories, but ultimately they stand on business about me just as much as I do. And it's almost like knowing that other people know you and see you makes you feel like no one else should have an excuse. And for me, it's like, well, if my partner can see me and love me, and my kid can see me and love me as I am, then y'all are just gonna have to deal with me.
And I tell you, it goes back to standing on business. I lie to you not. That is clearly is clearly your line right there, And it's just
That's
in
real.
every facet of life, like, gotta stand on business, gotta stand within our beliefs. So I love it. I love it.
we live in we live in a society where if it were possible for queer and trans folks to be blotted out, there is a not so small subset of folks who would be perfectly fine with that. They can't do it. They can't do it if we're screaming and pushing. It's not as effective. It's not as effective if we meet that action.
Yes, indeed.
It definitely calls to the strength, because that small subsection of people may see their actions of pushing the queer community and every other marginalized community out as something that'll be very easy for them and something that is necessary. But when you push back on that kind of stuff, you're definitely letting them know that while it's not easy, it is not necessary, because we're all human here, and everybody deserves to be able to live this human life that we have just fallen on random, the exact and 100% way that they choose to live it. And
Mhm.
you know, having everybody understand that acceptance of everybody and their truth isn't something that should be difficult. If you can accept yourself for who you are, those in the status quo, those are in that small subsection, then it should be no problem and no issue to accept everyone else for who they are and what they choose and how they choose to live their truth, because it doesn't hurt anyone. It doesn't hurt anyone for everybody to live their truth. And I think that's something that they need to recognize, because it's just stuck in old ways that I've definitely seen over time are progressively getting pushed out, and
Mhm.
new ways and new acceptance of human beings is starting more and more to be the norm.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's the thing is, you know, we think about the struggles of history. We think about how history has repeated itself with these struggles over time. You know, we think about the civil rights movement. We think about the 60s and 70s, and how and how folks who look like me were pushing for rights, and making sure that, you know, we were able to stand on the same ground as, you know, as our fellow Caucasian counterparts. And, you know, when you think about the struggle now, there are similarities. You know, Pride started as a riot. Pride was started by Black trans women. You
Right.
know, like, you know, and at the core of it is that's still the fight, is making sure that we can stand on equal footing with, you know, our cisgender Caucasian peers you know, who happen to experience the benefit of being normal by whatever, you know, by whatever standards the society has set. It's we're just fine too. Like, what's wrong with us, you know?
Right.
And you know, one of the things that I hope we get past at some point in society is the consistent need to come. And
Mhm.
I know that a lot of trans folks, and there may be some trans folks in this chat, experience that coming out over and over again is exhausting. It's so exhausting, you know? Like, I just want to say my name, my pronouns, and let's move on, you know? And that's the thing, is a lot of us, you know, we just want to be able to be ourselves, and like not have it be the centerpiece of everything. Let's just be ourselves and let's move forward. That's it,
Exactly.
you know? Um, looks like we've got a Q&A question here. How do you deal with microaggressions in everyday interactions? I get so tired of calling them out. Um, Personally, I'm kind of petty about this. I am a Gemini named Gemini, to be clear. But my reactions get more and more ridiculous if it's the same person doing it. So like if it's like an individual situation, I'll call them in, we'll have a quick chat about it, and I'll kind of move on. But if someone's kind of pushing that button a few times, I am going to make them feel equally as ridiculous as they are me. So I will go anywhere from the incredulous, oh my god, I had no clue. So like, you know, but at the end of the day, I take the comedy route with that. I choose to make people look as foolish as they choose to be.
Would you say it's difficult to handle some of those microaggressions that you deal with, that the person may not be fully aware of that, and they're they believe themselves to be doing the right or saying the right thing, or um, acting in the right way for the situation, but they're not? Do you think it's
Mhm.
harder for the ones that are a little bit slick, that could be construed as like, oh, they're just trying to help, or they're just saying they're not intentionally
Mhm.
doing this.
And that is difficult to navigate for sure. When it comes to bias, when it comes to discrimination, it is not nature, it is nurture.
Mhm.
So at the end of the day, if a person can learn that, then I believe at that point that I can be instrumental in helping them. And that's where the call-in conversation comes in, where it's like, okay, you may not have noticed that this stepped on feet, but this stepped on feet, and we should probably talk about it so you don't do it again. Yeah, and people are receptive to conversation. Like they're receptive to being talked to. And there's times when there's times when we need to raise our voice. Absolutely. I don't think that there aren't times that we need to raise our voices, especially in protests, especially when there is madness going on and something needs to break through the madness. You know, but I do believe that we have at least reached a point in society where people are more amenable to having a conversation. And maybe the pandemic made people a little more take that on the chin. But generally, I have found, especially recently, that people are more willing to just talk about it because they don't understand. And they're willing to figure it out if they at least had an understanding of what was going on. My mother's a perfect example. Like, my mother was not exactly pro queer growing up, which is why I did not have the conversation about my queerness until I moved to Texas. Um, but she's had to navigate having a fourth daughter instead of having three daughters inside. And if my mom can do it, I have faith that most people can. You know, people just sometimes you gotta explain things to them. Sometimes, and I don't love it. I don't love that, the labor is necessary even still. But there are times when sometimes you just gotta sit somebody down and say, hey, um, let's talk about why this is historically a problem and why we shouldn't do it at present. And sometimes people need and appreciate that calling. And
Hmm.
I find that if I approach expecting first to call somebody in and then reacting to what they said, I generally get better results.
Love that.
Gemini, I want to point out, I sent you a message because I saw a question and responded and said we would answer that. So I wanted to bring it to your attention and I accidentally moved the question over. But there was a question in there kind of related to what we're talking about here. Well, what you were talking about before was, are there specific resources that you use to help yourself find confidence with being who you are in public? My wife recently came out last year as a trans woman, and it's been really hard for her in public. Additionally, I'm still very in the closet about being trans, and I'm worried about how people view us.
Honestly, the answer that's worked best for me is community. The more people around me who are willing to more or less see me, the easier it is for me to say, "Oh, why aren't y'all? That's y'all's problem. Please go figure it out." I think that it wouldn't be a terrible idea, as far as resources for that, to find Facebook groups. That was one that I found particularly helpful for me. Facebook groups that are queer friendly, that are trans friendly, and that are local, because we're everywhere and we're all trying to find each other. Facebook seems to be where most of the folks over 25 can find each other. I don't really know what social media the youths are using beyond TikTok. So, y'all might have to help me out on that one. But, I found that Facebook groups were very, very helpful for me as far as finding community. And once one finds community, then one is accepted in one community, one will feel acceptance in other communities. So, you know, kind of try to operate that way in general. Yeah, that would definitely be my strongest advice. Let's see.
Thank
Looks
you.
like
There's
we've
a few
got,
more questions in there too, so if you want to check
Yeah.
those out too, feel free.
what are some of your favorite queer activists to listen to speak on things? That is a really good question. So, as far as listening to queer activism, it's actually not something I do very commonly, but I do a fair amount of reading. And my reading is mostly feminist theory. I read about feminist theory and I read about disabled stuff. That's a lot of what I read about. But as far as who I'm reading, bell hooks comes up a lot in my library, and I spend a lot of time analyzing the works and how they intersectionally apply to someone like me. I discovered bell hooks through a women's studies class that I took in undergrad, and yeah, kind of took off from there. I was like, oh wow, this is incredible. Let me sit with this for a minute, you know. And it was great at that point in time because, you know, not at that point having the conversation that I needed to have with myself just yet, but operating in the world as a cis man, it allowed me to stop and check myself. Like, wait a minute. I should I should look into this before I say anything. Or I should maybe not say anything and just read. You know, and so it gives you the opportunity to just take a moment back and understand a better idea of what's going on. I'm a bit of an oldie when it comes to that, but definitely reading feminist theory has helped to inform my opinions a lot. Let's see here. Looks like we got another one. There are definitely a lot of challenges that we face while trying to discover yourself and live authentically, both on a personal level, but for all of us who are a part of these communities as a whole. It can be really hard to keep the faith and keep putting in the work when we are seeing so many people fighting for their lives every day. Among all the hardships and disappointments we face on our own and together, what things have brought you joy? Are there any things in your personal life or on a broader level that you can look to when things get overwhelming? Well, I keep a very steady daily diet of chill activities in my life. um, when I get exasperated with the world, I go hide in my bedroom and I play Stardew Valley for hours on end, sometimes forgetting to sleep. It's fine. um, but, you know, spending time with my partner, spending time with my family, most recently watching the Kendrick Lamar Juneteenth concert because that was hours of enjoyable activity. Oh my God. But in general, diving into music, I am a musician. I am currently working on my first album. So, you know, I dig into what I can dig into creatively, and that's kind of my outlet to deal with my emotions regarding how society navigates my existence, which is not well. And yes, Riley, Stardew Valley is for the gays. You are so correct.
I wanted to share that I'm putting in the chat links to our microsites for all of you. In case you haven't seen that yet, please check those out and save them. Gemini, we have these internal microsites that we, unfortunately, I could share a screenshot with you, but I couldn't share the link because it's only for ZoomInfo employees. But it is we have one for all three of these ERGs that are working on this today. For Queer Plus, one for Zoom in Color, and then one for the Women's Initiative Network, where we have resources and links to sign up for events. And one thing that you just mentioned that stands out to me as an artist myself, Gemini, is an art outlet or some sort of creative outlet. And for Juneteenth, we started, and we'll be doing this all year. It's not just going to be Juneteenth, but for Wednesday, we started this page that's local artists, small business owners, artists that are Black artists who share either visual art, music. Some of those folks you'll notice are employees here at ZoomInfo, and then many are people that our employees know or referenced or even just suggested. So please keep an eye on that page, everybody. I'll share the link in the chat again. If you want to stay aware of some resources that will be shared in there. And then if you have resources, always send us a message. We'd love to see it. You can post it in the channels or you can DM one of us. You see all these leaders, take note of our names. We'll get it looked at and shared with our team and then hopefully put up on the website.
Yeah, if I come across any resources, I'll definitely send them your way. Also, for folks in the chat, Riley just asked me to drop my Spotify link, so I just did in the chat for anybody who's looking. Y'all can find me on all of the music things as Gemini Phoenix. I have 3 beat tapes out right now, and I'm working on my first album called Safari, which is to be hopefully released before the end of the year.
Also, I'm going to share Gemini's LinkedIn in case you haven't already gone there and added her. I'm going to grab her LinkedIn page here, so that'll be there too.
Looks like we got another question in the Q&A. How do you keep yourself from closing yourself off from others emotionally, i.e. investing in new friends? That is a great question because it is something that I have a conversation with myself with very often. It's not easy to invest energy in new people when you're investing all of your energy into surviving. But one of the things that I have found in making connection and creating community is that when you create a community that can actually help you with like just being you and existing as you find that you use less energy in the fight because you're not doing it on your own. So for me, I keep myself open to folks who see me, folks who are willing to see me where I'm at, and folks who are willing to grow in that conversation. And I don't make energy or time for folks who do otherwise. So for me, I reserve my energy in particular for folks like that. I have the advantage of already being a part of a community, but this kind of goes back to finding those communities, especially on social media. We are all looking for each other. And I find that finding friends online first helps so much with navigating even the local friendships I have. There is something to be said for being able to create connections before people can physically judge you and those people being able to then match the person they see with the person they know. So for me, online connections, like making my connections online first, making sure that everything's clear to go before meeting people in person, and then meeting people in person at public places or at social events has been super helpful in like growing the community around me.
I think that's a great point to make because it can definitely be very difficult to just put yourself. I think we've definitely strayed away, especially with like the creation of the internet and how much it's evolved, away from like in-person connections. It seems almost foreign to like meet someone firsthand in person without vetting them first on the internet or having that kind of internet funnel be the source of how you guys connect. But it can also be a safe haven for the times that we live in, because as much as we surround ourselves with the communities that we have that accept us for who we are and how we choose to live our lives, we also have to understand that the reality we live in is that there are other communities that butt heads and make it difficult for us to live our truths. And vetting through like Facebook groups and talking to somebody online allows for the true authentic, this is just the personality, or for some cases, like this is the person that I'm pushing out that I want you to see. If this is the person that you want to meet and be friends with and connect with, this is who I am. It's there was a thing, when simply just existing as any kind of marginalized person, but definitely intersectional marginalized people. When simply existing is resistance, it's so comforting and I think freeing for that community from the people that I've spoken with, that to be able to build that community of accepting people, because it definitely, your reality is based off of who you choose to surround yourself with. And if you choose to surround yourself with the people who accept you for who you are, it makes it easier for you to be who you are.
Yeah, this journey can be incredibly isolating. You know, if you don't have community, if you don't have resources, it can be very, very, very trying, very lonely. You know, and it's very important that we're able to sort of find, I say, find our champions, if that makes sense. You know, in the music industry, when we talk about growing your following, when you're growing your initial following, we talk about finding your champion fans, finding the folks who are going to spread your message, who are going to spread your word, who are going to make it so that other people listen to you. And that's how the tentacles spread to sort of expanding your music network such that you can grow your fan base. So it's a very similar concept to where you're sort of, you have these pinnacle people or champions who say, this is who this person is, and I am equally as willing to stand on business about it as that person is. Those people will stand on business for you, which will allow other people to stand on business for you, and it becomes a building community in that manner. And community, like Riley said, community in and of itself is a form of resistance. So finding each other is literally a protest at this point. Like the status quo desires separation, so let's find each other, you know?
We have another question in the chat. What is your favorite part of being a trans woman?
There is absolute euphoria in not having to put the mask on every day. That was one of the most exhausting things of existing as a boy. Was like, I knew I was putting on a mask and had no clue why. And that stung. It hurt. I would get up in the morning and fix a beard that I didn't even want to have. And it was this trying experience for me. I get to wake up and I see myself in the mirror and I'm like, oh, girl, you cute. Okay. You know, and it feels affirming to to be able to see myself. And, you know, for some people, they're able to reach this space by social transition. For me, I didn't actually start to see it until I began medically transitioning. I currently take HRT and have been on HRT for about 4 months now. But for me, once you get to the point where you don't have to pick the mask up and put it on every day, it is so free. And that's got to be my favorite part, without question.
Amazing. Well, I definitely hate to wrap us up, but I do want to make sure I honor our time frame for both you, Gemini, and the time that we have asked for you, and respecting that. And then also those who are here in attendance who have to drop and may feel a little bad if we don't give them some sort of grace in that regard too. So please continue to have these conversations. Part of the reason that this is the format that it is that it's not a presentation. It's not in a box. We don't leave here going, great, I gained 2, I'm not doing anything else anymore. We keep having these conversations. Have them at work. ZoomInfo wants us to, at least that's what they communicate. So let's go ahead and do it, right? And keep going until we hear otherwise. And we empower each other when we continue to have these conversations, and we enable each other and listen, you know, like if we're an ally, then be an ally and listen. I just want to give an exit ritual as an offer to empower us to walk away with the material we're talking about instead of feeling kind of disoriented, if that makes you feel that way at all. For me, I like to have some sort of guidance into the next thing I do to take this with me. So I offer to you all to take a moment to breathe again and repeat that mantra to yourself that you are enough. I am enough because I exist. You don't have to do anything to be enough. You just exist. So let's just take 3 deep breaths for a moment. All right. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. And thank you, my fellow leaders here, Kadeem, Mason, Monique, Andrea, Hunter, and everybody for commenting and for asking questions. Everybody, I mean, everything that you've done today just to be here is a lot of bravery and courage. And I feel strong community in that too, as someone who's part of these marginalized, some of these marginalized groups. And so thank you all for your energy and your bravery. I'll go ahead and hang out here, and we can wait till everybody drops. And if there's any last minute things, feel free to shoot those questions out. And if anything else comes in that I can forward to Jim and I, then I will. Of
course.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you as well, Tiffany. You take care.
You too, Mason.
Thank you to y'all. Y'all be safe.
Thank you. Great. All right, it's just the few of us, so I'll go ahead and close this out. Or I believe, Andrea, you have the power to. So feel free to do that.
I was just making sure I didn't close too soon. Bye.
Bye.